Well, thanks very much indeed. Welcome to the show. I am Jim Ferguson, and I'm delighted to be here with Ana Maria Pacuraru. She is the Senior Foreign Affairs Editor and is a Board Director at Rally Tata. Ana Maria, it's great to see you.
Great to see you too, Jim.
Now, the last time we spoke, there was a lot of things happening in Romania. Can you give us a little bit of an update what's been going on and a recap what's actually been happening?
Of course. Well, thanks for having me on. And let me walk you through where things actually stand, because there's been a lot happening. And I think that the pattern matters more than any single episode. So our license was revoked on April 7th of this year. And one day later, the Bucharest Court of Appeal already suspended that decision. And that was just the beginning. On May 15th, the same court came back and suspended it again, this time until the case is fully resolved. And that ruling came from the judge who will also decide the underlying annulment. Then in late May, CNA came after us again with a new maximum sanction, 3 hours off the air. And by June 3rd, the court had already blocked that too. So they tried again in early July, another 3-hour suspension. And this time, the court struck it down within 48 hours. And I have to mention this one because it tells you absolutely everything. In that July session, for the very first time, our lawyer wasn't even allowed to speak. He couldn't defend us in the room where the decision was being made. Then on July 21st came a record fine. 200,000 lei, which is roughly $40,000. And yes, the court suspended that one as well.
That's unbelievable. And they're not giving any kind of length of time to make those decisions. I mean, it sounds to me like they're making these decisions as a pre-made decision. They're trying to stop you from speaking out and telling the truth, from my point of view.
Well, yeah, and exactly like in Romania, and we're talking about the law, so all of the fines have been paid, and later on we contest them. But what you're looking at now is 5 separate panels of judges at 5 separate moments, independently reaching the same conclusion that these sanctions lack a legal basis, that there are, in the court's own words, well-founded indications of unlawfulness. So this isn't one outlet complaining about its regulator. This is the judiciary itself, again and again, stepping in to corrupt the same body.
Why do you think they're doing this? And what is the real motive behind it?
Well, you know, everything started ever since we had the annulment of elections, and we contested the actual reason behind the annulment of elections. We were the only voice, the only outlet that permitted the opposition opposing party with this George Simion and our party, as well as Călin Georgescu, to come on our air. We offered them airtime because we don't have contracts with the state. We don't have publicity from them. So that meant that we were able and we were free to take whoever we wanted on our show. We wanted to showcase the truth behind everything that happened after the annulment of elections. And that's when everything happened. And further on, here is where I want to be very precise about, Jim, because I don't want anyone to walk away thinking that we're claiming innocence that we haven't earned. We paid our fines, every one of them, from 2024 and 2025. We paid them because that's what Romanian law requires, regardless of whether you're contesting them or not. But paying a fine is not admitting guilt. We challenged every single one of those fines in court, and the license revocation itself was built on fines that were still under judicial review at the very moment CNA decided to pull us off the air. So that's the part people actually miss.
Now, CNA, just to explain who they are and what they do.
Yeah, so CNA is actually a group of people that they are appointed politically. So they're from different various parties, obviously, that are in power right now. So the opposing party who, you know, rough enough, they have been on our show and we have been sanctioned because we had them here, the leader of the opposing party. So they are the members that are making this cohort of the CNA, and they are the ones judging us on our media execution. So of course, like by the basis, the rules are that you should have airtime for all of the parties. You should ask their ethical questions, which of course we regard and which of course we obey to. But to this extent, the CNA went even further. It went into a political fiesta with us, if I may say, because it became an actual fiasco. Because it became as a battle of censorship, as a political revenge to what we were opposing, because again, they're appointed by government, by leading parties, and not by the opposition. The opposition has no say in it.
Right, and that distinction matters, because if you're reporting in a fair and balanced way, you know, what Kaylin Georgescu was saying, what George Simeon was saying, they might not like that.
Of course.
But that's too bad, because you've got to report all sides.
And we're talking about freedom of speech.
Yeah, exactly. But freedom of speech. But the whole element of the election was after accusations were made about Russian collusion. Now, unless I'm wrong, with no proof. Well, I was just going to say, there's been no proof given, yet Nikursher Dan has said that he's got all this evidence, but he's not presented any evidence yet, has he?
No, he hasn't, because there is no evidence to present, obviously. So long has passed, we don't even know if such a report will be happening. We are actually here at Realitatea Plus, we're working on a documentary of the annulment of the elections, because we will mark 2 years on the 6th of December since the elections have been annulled. And that's when we want to release our documentary. So I'm actually curious if we will ever see such a report, because honestly, I don't think that exists, because it would have surfaced until now. It would have been declassified, but nothing has been declassified. And further on, looking at our case, because we are part of the problem, that's what I'm trying to say. And I know that even universities in the UK, their research institutes, they're starting to pay attention very closely to the annulment of elections, to the annulment of democracy, if I may, in Romania. They're actually researching what happened here, and we are part of the problem. Realitatea Plus is part of the whole situation that happened with the annulment of elections, because after we gave voice to those people, we have been censored. So the freedom of speech no longer existed. And here, if I can say, there is something else that I think that is very telling, which is the timing. Some of these sanctions that we got weren't even about anything recent. CNA would go back to broadcasts that we had from February, from March, from April, sometime reaching back 4 or 5 months after the fact, for things that we had already corrected, for fines that we have already paid. They set the file aside, move on to other business for months, and then suddenly they would resurface it. So if you're sanctioning someone for something they already fixed, 4 months later, at the maximum penalty every single time, you have to ask yourself what the actual purpose of that is, because that is the other pattern here, because every single one of these was the maximum penalty available under Romanian law. So not a warning, not a proportional fine, the maximum every single time against a channel that, and this is important, is actually one of the only ones in Romania still putting opposition voices on air.
Yeah, and that's really important, because they want a system where they only hear politicians and voices that fit in with their particular narrative. Now, our friends in the United States have been paying very close attention to what's going on in Romania in relation to censorship, freedom of speech, and what, in particular, what has happened with the actual election itself, the annulment of it. There was a Judicial Committee report which is very far-reaching, which has exposed and examined collusion between some of those within the European Commission and even the French intelligence service. Now, what's your own thinking on that, and where is that sitting at the moment?
Well, you know, we actually are, after everything that happened to us, we actually moved our company in the United States exactly to have this freedom of press. So now we are an American entity, and I have ever since got all of my accreditation, my White House accreditations, Department of State badge. So I'm very into that area right now, because I want to raise awareness of everything that's happening here. And as you said, Jim, this is quite a subject that is pertaining to many other democracies, real democracies, democracies in the world. Of course, we cannot dismantle what happened when the CCR, the Constitutional Court of Romania, actually met with the French embassy, and that's what you're trying to bring up again, because true, in the annulment of elections, we had a really bizarre meeting with the French embassy, which we know that no embassy should partake in the business of one country, of a democratic country. They can assist, they can watch, they can deliver, they can also further on note and create reports on what is happening, but they can in no shape, way, or form involve themselves in the election process, democratic process, political process of a country. And this is something that until this day we don't have an official report about. We know that there have been implications, foreign implications, and not the ones that they might say that there have been Russian interferences. So we're trying to get a hold of all the documentations to even know about the TikTok phenomenon, because as you know, Călin Georgescu rose on TikTok. And from TikTok, I want to say that people just say that it was like funded, like Russian funded, but look at the audience that has actually watched our channel, for example, when Călin Georgescu first came to us. So on that very first day, when he moved from online to the TV, and he came here at Anca Alexandrescu, at my colleague, on her primetime show, Culisele Statului Paralel, he exploded, like the audience levels exploded. It was never before seen in the history of television. So then my question would be, was it really all fake? Was it really foreign interference in the scenario of Russian interference for Călin Georgescu? Since we see that those people actually came and they're real, they actually watched the show when he was on it, and we have all the data, and the data doesn't lie. We have it every single day. But of course, we have the annulment of elections, which we can comment on. Why did the French embassy interfere? Why did they have a meeting with the Constitutional Court? That the Constitutional Court, on the 6th of December, while the diaspora was still voting, they annulled the election. So people were still in line trying to vote for the president they wanted, and that's when everything was annulled. So it's without precedent. It's something never before seen.
Why do you think Macron's French government would have been showing such an interest in Romania? And indeed, what right does the EU Commission have to allege foreign election interference when you've got potential for France to have been involved in interference with your own election in Romania?
Of course. Well, here in Romania, even now, the political parties that we have, one of the main ones is USR. USR is a great leftist party. It's a progressist party. It's a party that claims not to have a modern family at view. It claims to go to the George Soros-funded NGOs. So all of those NGOs actually created this party, which is now leading in Romania. Even now in Romania, our prime minister is no longer in function. He has been demitted. He has been fired by the parliament, and he is still in right to be as a current prime minister, even though he is not a plenipotentiary one right now. But he has been ongoing for the past 2 months, which is unprecedented. This has never happened in the history of our country, or I think in the history of any democratic country, to have a prime minister that has been demitted by parliament and still being here. And now his greatest deal, because he has been the supporter of this USR, is to partake and to actually take away or steal a part of that party with his current party, which was one of the first political parties in Romania, in order to fuse it and to make a new one. So this NGOs of obscure George Soros-funded government systems, they have been at the basis of all of the illegalities that have been happening in recent times. And we can see this ongoing even now, 2 years after the annulment of elections, and we are in 2026.
When is the next election due to be taking place?
Excuse me?
When is the next election in Romania due to be taking place?
Well, we're midterm, so we have to wait 2 more years. But the thing is that we have to see like the new government that is going to take place, that is going to be establishing itself, and that will perhaps happen in a few weeks, because now our president is going to meet with different political parties to determine. So Nicu Jordan has to determine who the new prime minister will be. May I remind you that a month ago, or 2 months ago almost, Nicu Jordan met already with different political parties. He came with the proposition of 2 possible prime ministers, but they both fell during the voting system in parliament. So we are now actually eager to see which direction our political party of the country would actually go to, because of course that will rest in our future presidential elections. But the prime minister is of a great importance to our country, and we can see the debt we are in now in Romania, the problems that surface, that we still don't have a response to everything that happened with the annulment of elections. So everything is interconnected, and of course, let's hope that in a few weeks we might have a new prime minister and we can actually move forward from this dark episode in our era.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people will be paying a lot of close attention to the fact that this might occur. I mean, do you think there's a possibility of some form of early elections rather than waiting for the next 2 years?
That's what they're trying to do now. That's what they're trying, anticipated elections. So George Simeon's party, for example, is one of the leading promoters of the anticipated elections. So that would mean that we would actually go and vote for the parliamentary. And whoever is in parliament obviously will have as many seats, and in order to obtain the total power of the parliament. They are leading towards that. I don't know if it will actually get to that area. There's another proposition also of demitting, of firing the president, which is again with no president. We have to see if that would go through, if they have enough people to actually go towards that and to actually sign the waiver in the case of this happening. But I feel like with this whole chaos, Romania has to suffer a lot. And looking at foreign affairs, I think that our relationship with the US is strained. Our relationship with Europe is pathetic, if I may say, because Europe actually controls what we do, what we say, whenever we say it, whatever we do, because we have no power to actually expose our thoughts. Because look at the people who are in control. They don't even know if tomorrow they'll have a job or what their future plan is, because today they are, tomorrow they're no longer there. So we change these prime ministers so fast. And unfortunately, they're not looking at the interest of our country. Some people go as far as saying as those people hate Romania. And one more thing, the many ministers in our cabinet, they have double citizenship, which is hallucinating. So they're not fully Romanian. They have double citizenship. So that means that they might be defending another country's, another nation's interests, which shouldn't be the case.
Well, I mean, obviously, we're talking about Romania, we're talking about Romanian policies, Romanian governments. If they've got some link into other governments, then I hear exactly what you're saying. That is not beneficial to the Romanian people themselves. You know, I'm thinking back to Thierry Breton, who was heavily involved with the EU Commission, who pretty much admitted to some foul play going on in the last election in Romania. And indeed, he was even referring to the rise of the AfD in Germany. And he made a comment that if necessary, they would do the same thing in Germany. The AfD are rising very rapidly there. They're deeply patriotic. They want to see the right direction for Germany being taken. And they're rising rapidly in the polls, of course, led by Alice Weidel, who I personally believe will be the next Chancellor of Germany. Do you see a pattern of behavior by the EU Commission, not just in what they've done in Romania, but actually what they're doing in all of our other nations across Europe?
For sure, but I think that the other countries, at least, they could stand up, or they had a greater power to stand up for their rights, whereas in our case, it actually, like, an annulment actually happened, which is mind-boggling. But remember what happened to Trump before he got elected in his second term. So everything that happened to Trump when they were trying to destroy him with media, publicly, all of the news outlets like Fox News, they were trying to be dismantled because they were promoting Trump. So this is exactly the same pattern. And once Trump got to power, one of his main goals was to have a credible and to have a free-for-all freedom of speech. So everyone had the power. And look, I got my White House credentials, and now we even have vloggers there, bloggers, influencers, which for sure, we are in 2026. We have to have access for all, and there is freedom of speech. You cannot censor someone just because they're not saying what you want them to say, just because they're not getting the money from the government, from the state, where you want to control the power. So I think we will end up being in the right direction. I think that the truth always prevails. I'm a firm believer of that, and it has always been demonstrated as such. And I think that our case and the case of Romania should be triggering for other democracies, because this might happen to them. Of course, as you were saying, how we see this nationalist idea being promoted. Yes, I think this is the future. We have always been promoting this even before Călin Georgescu. So Realitatea Plus was always promoting a nationalism, sovereign nation. And we were always, and many people say, oh, nationalism, sovereign, it's like an evil term. No, it's not. It means protecting your interests before protecting other nations' interests. And I think this is what Romania is actually lacking. But again, I think this will be the path that we will actually end up believing in and end up having ruling Romania. And I think that once we have that, we will have a common order, and an order when we can actually progress and not go backwards as we are in this case right now.
I've taken a big interest in Eastern Europe in particular, and in fact, Romania, been there many times. I was there before the election. I was there on the night of the election itself. I know all of the people around George Simeon very well, including George himself. He is a real Romanian patriot. He believes in sovereignty. He believes in justice and the rule of law. And he's very well respected internationally as well. Of course, he's got a lot of friends in the United States. He's also got a lot of friends in Poland and other European nations as well. But the far left seem to be very much against national identity. They want to promote ideologies that are not beneficial to sovereign nations. You mentioned George Soros earlier on. What is his involvement, or his son Alex Soros? What's his involvement been like in Romania? Has he been there? And do you think his NGOs are part of the problem?
Yes, very much. And look, the prime ministers and most of the members of USR, the far leftist, let's call them, exactly, the leftist party of Romania. They are actually people who have their studies funded by Soros. They have been traveling to Soros's fundings and everything that controls in the way they think. So those people, they're very young, as we can see in the pattern where George Soros actually includes himself in, and as you said, Alex Soros too. And they are actually connected greatly to those of the fundings and of the NGOs that are promoted by George Soros. So this is why we can actually see that the defeat of actually trying to overrule them, because the person you're trying to defeat is just a puppet of what is behind. And what is behind, of course, there are other institutions, and there are, of course, other foreign implications, as you said, France. And France, again, why did Macron, during his term, interfere in our elections? It's a question I want to know. It's a question I asked the French institutions, and I think it's very problematic. Also, our PNRR, which is a grant we got from the European Union on redesigning economically Romania. All of the people who actually wrote on it were partook in a negotiation, an obscure negotiation with the French government. And we saw, I actually conducted an interview with Senator Bazin from France. He was actually the one who dismantled all of those corporations that worked on this PNRR. The companies that also work in Romania also had litigations in France. So they're exactly the same companies, sums of money on Romania that Romania received from Brussels that entered some ministers' pockets because of different negotiations behind curtains, which is totally illegal. And it's with the national security of our country. And again, this doesn't mean sovereignty. This doesn't mean nationalism. This is the interest of another nation in our own nation. And the minister, the people who permitted this to happen, are the ones who should be taken aside and actually convicted on everything they have been doing through the rule of law. And this is not happening.
I mean, as we've said, our American friends are paying very close attention to what's going on, not just in Romania, but they have a big interest in Romania. I know many of them and meet many of them when we're at those joint events. But I mean, J.D. Vance has said that they believe in the Constitution, freedom of speech, and if you want to do business with the United States, you've got to embrace those values. I wonder, Ana Maria, if there may be such significant fallout over this yet, that there might be some changing dynamics to the European Union or the European Commission itself, because we've seen, and I will go back to Alice Weidel in Germany at the moment. She said that if and when she becomes Chancellor of Germany, they will seek to disband the unelected bureaucrats in the EU Commission. The way we see it is that the European parliamentarians, those duly elected lawmakers, they're not the problem. But the EU Commission, that unelected body of bureaucrats who can annul policies or even stop the lawmakers from taking these policies forward, there seem to be the biggest problem. Do you think
this is exactly what's happening to us?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
This is exactly what's happening to us. And true, like we see this happening. It's a pattern. And I think that this is something different that we are trying to approach, because we know that at the basis, we haven't done anything wrong. We paid our fines. We are not corrupt. We didn't run away from the country trying to hide in a trunk to get away from the law or from the rules. And I think that it's gone even further than the courtroom now, because Realitatea Plus us, we have filed the first civil liability action, and not against the institution, against the individual members of CNA who voted for these sanctions personally, who were seeking damages of over 1 million euros. And that is just the first case, because there will be separate actions filed for each unlawful decision, because at some point, if 5 courts have independently found the same abusive pattern, the people who kept voting for it shouldn't get to hide behind the institution's name. So I will let the facts speak, Jem. So 5 panels of judges, 5 rulings, 1 broadcaster, and a regulator that keeps losing in court and keeps coming back anyway. You can draw your own conclusions about what that looks like. And this is just in our case, but this is the pattern that's happening in a national level. This is happening with the annulment of elections. This is happening now with the censorship of media, and there are other media outlets that are in our shoes. We're not talking only about banning it online, but this is something we might say of national security, and we're going back to the communist era if you're trying to censor someone. And again, I think that they're actually if I may describe the pattern in one sentence, since our license was revoked on April 7th, the courts have overturned every single CNA sanction against us. 5 separate panels, 5 separate rulings, all finding the same thing: no legal basis. So this is what everything is summed up to. And this pattern is also, as I mentioned before, relevant to the annulment of elections, relevant to the firing of our government right now, of our prime minister, and nothing is happening. This is a disease that is overtaking our nation.
This is really very interesting because you're taking a legal action against the individuals who have been perpetrating this. Well, this is very, very interesting because this could be problematic for them individually, which I think is the right direction for you to be taking. But the other thing that you've explained, and it's very important, and I'm thinking of Senator Andrei Derlau. I spoke with him at length. When he was a young man, he witnessed the revolution after Ceausescu's government fell. And it's important for our friends around the world to understand that Romania was part of the Soviet Union. They were under the heel of the state apparatus that wouldn't allow anyone to speak. And bad things happened to a lot of people that tried to resist. Do you think there is a feeling or a mood within the country in Romania that things could get so bad that there might be massive unrest in the streets of Bucharest and the area around the country, where if the people feel that they're being robbed of their due process and who they want to run the country, could that happen?
Exactly. I think it could, and I think it actually is going in that direction because people are completely fed up with everything that is happening. Even now we have electricity, energy problems, we have water shortage, and everything our prime minister, for example, is telling us is to cut back from using the light, cut back from using water, and that is absolutely hallucinating to talk about in 2026 when, as you said, we have been gone through the communist period. Many people from Romania know what that means. And this is kind of like a sentiment of fear that we will go back, especially to those who have lived it and who have paid with their blood to get away from it. And now we're going backwards. So it's mind-boggling that this is happening. We're talking about this now. But honestly, I want to stay positive. I think everything will go into the right direction once we have a new prime minister, once we have a new leadership, because only the leadership can actually change all of the narrative. And if all of our ministers, as I said, most of them come from the USR party, the George Soros party, if I may say, then we know the direction it's going through. But I think they kind of like lost their attributes, and they're already becoming dismantling. So now we're kind of like going into a refreshing area where everyone is being swept away, and finally, hopefully, we will have a right path. And that doesn't mean necessarily that doesn't mean necessarily Călin Georgescu or George Simion, but we need a balance between parties, and we need to actually go to negotiations and find a right solution, not just to stay the way we are in a lethargic accommodation right now, because it's just useful for us in the moment. But we have to find a solution in order to overcome those problems.
Ana Maria, the Romanian people are great people. I've always been made incredibly welcome there. And I know many who live and work here in the United Kingdom as well. They're hardworking people, they're traditional people, and they love their country. Romania is also, could be a wealthy country. It's a poor country in that all of the problems which we've discussed previously, but it could be so much better with the right leadership. What would you say to the people around the world when it comes to Romania itself as being a viable partner to countries like the United States, to the United Kingdom, to all these other great nations? Because if it was given the right leadership, things would change. People would get better wages, better conditions, get the costs of living down. It could be so much better.
Yeah, I was just recently, a few months ago, in China at a journalist program for 3 weeks, 2 weeks and a half. And we actually had panels there with the foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs in China, and we were asked to have a statement representing our country. So there was Poland there, it was me representing Romania, there were different outlets like Bulgaria, Hungary, and other countries. And Romania doesn't need to raise awareness of who we are, because we are a big country, we are a meaningful country. Let's not forget where the conflict is now in Ukraine. So we have the longest border. We must be protected. We have all of those drones that are falling now in Romania because the minister is unable to find a solution to protect us and to be weary of everything that is happening. And to have good negotiations with leaders and with allies that we have, because as I mentioned, these would be our only solution, and first and foremost, the United States of America. But when these partners see that this corruption is happening in our country, how can you trust a country? It's like in a partnership. How can you trust a partner to work with him when he cannot even keep his family together, when he cannot even conduct himself properly in his own family? How can you do business with that person? Because you don't trust him. It's exactly what is happening now in Romania. That doesn't mean that we're a lost cause. Far from that. I think we are a great people. I think we are very hardworking. We are very, many notable Romanians have reached the highest points in education, in science, in sports, internationally, but this corruption that is feeding right now in Romania, at one point it will stop. As I said, this disease will end, but it takes time. And first of all, it takes the bravery to meet, like all of the parties, depending on their views, to meet together and to talk it through, to find a solution. Because the solution won't be found tomorrow or in 2 days, but if they don't come to the same table to discuss and to find who the next prime minister will be, who the next ministers will be, what the plan of action of this country is, short, medium, and long term, then of course nobody will want to represent us and to be partners with us. And let me tell you, the United Nations General Assembly will take place now in September. President Nicușor will be there. I will be there, and many other media outlets will be there. I will be going with the White House press corps there. But I'm very curious if how Nicușor will be viewed there and how Romania will be viewed there with all of the world leaders, when we know there have been so many problems in our country in the past several months that have been reaching international awareness. So I think it will be really, really interesting. It will also be an important image overturn for our country if we will be viewed correctly or not. But things have to move forward, things have to happen, and I think we have to be optimists in believing such things.
Yes, absolutely. And a meeting, and it was a Romanian tax system. What does Romania need to get things back on track? Sepesh.
Well, I think first of all, Romania needs to be. Romania, I think, needs to be responsible first and foremost, and to have leaders who can actually sit and work through the shortages together in order to find the right path. We also need to have answers of why everything happened as such, because you cannot lie to the population, you cannot lie to the people. And once we have a good direction of having a solid executive to lead the country, then I think we will be on the right track. And then I think that we will actually be able to be promoted internationally and to be actors that actually count and that actually matter in the international stage.
always do with my great guests, I would like to invite you to have the last and final to say to our international community. And can I just say a huge thank you to you and against censorship and fighting for the interests of the Romanian people.
Thank you so much, Jim. Well, thank you for having me on. And yeah, well, our last message, if I may, as a company, as Realitatea Plus, as a news channel in Romania, battling with everything. So our message is this: Realitatea Plus has now filed the first civil liability action against individual CNA members personally and not the institution. The people who voted these sanctions through seeking over 1 million euros in damages. This is the first case. Separate actions are planned for each unlawful decision. And the message is that officials who use a regulatory body to file what 5 courts have now flagged as being an abusive campaign on a single broadcaster don't get to hide under institutional immunity. And I just want to say that litigation is ongoing, and I won't be able to get ahead of the courts, but I trust the judicial process in Romania, and I trust the rule of law of this country.
Good to speak with you, and you are a great Romanian patriot in your own right, but time to speak with us today and to tell us and to give us an update on exactly what I commend you for it, and appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Jim. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for having me on. Thank you.
All right. Well, until next time, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.